Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make Monnom Black style hard techno like Dax J. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, and MIDI presets, everything from this video, right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and yeah, let's get started. So, this is the loop from the intro. It's 136 BPM. The first sound that we have is the kick, which sounds like this. So the way this kick is made is I took this sample, pretty punchy, sort of 909 style kick, and then I brought it in here, and it's basically just adding a bit of overdrive with this pedal, and then this drum bus fattening it up. So here's with no processing, and then with the pedal you can hear, and then the drum bus gives it that extra push. So yeah, this is the style of kick you typically hear in these tracks. It's just that really cool old school hard techno style, little bit crunchy kick like this. The key is to get it almost on the edge of distortion where it's still it's still distorted and it's still pretty saturated, but it's not just a hard style kick. If I turn on the fuzz setting, that would be too much. It's that perfect blend between a punchy kick and a distorted kick. And so this is how you do it, is by using a pedal and the drum bus. Pedal is really good because this is typically how a lot of these kicks are made, is people will put a kick through a guitar distortion pedal or something like that, a fuzz pedal or an overdrive. So this gives you that, but inside the box. So I'm using that. The other thing here to keep in mind is low passing it. So this is something that I've noticed for these kinds of kicks, because when you distort them, if you have a lot of high frequencies coming through, it's gonna not really sound right. You're gonna have this really sharp sounding kick where you need it to really be more crunchy in the mid range. So that's what this low pass is doing, and I'll show you the difference. Here's without it, and then with it. So it's subtle, but it's just helping to focus the distortion a little bit more, because it's still going to have high frequencies just by virtue of the fact that it has distortion. But this is just making sure that the distortion isn't going to distort any unwanted frequencies. And yeah, that is it for the kick. From there we have the bass line, which sounds like this. So here's the MIDI. It's pretty simple. We're in B minor, so you can see, we just have this sort of dark sounding B thing. I guess that C isn't technically in B minor, but we're using, it's that really simple dark scale where it's basically just these three notes, just the da-na-na kind of thing. And then we're just playing with that rhythmically in this way that works really well with the kick. It's mostly just focusing on the eighth notes, how this is kind of bouncing up there instead of right on the beat. That's what's creating this groove. And then just bouncing between the low notes and the high notes, because if these were all just lower, it's still a cool bass line, but you don't get that super high bass notes like that. And yeah, then for the sound with this one, this is made using 3 layers actually. So we have this layer. I'll solo it. This layer. And then the sub layer. So the first layer is analog. It's just 2 saw waves. I've got them detuned a pretty good amount because there's that detune there, and I've got the unison up. And then we have a low pass on those. And then, the low pass is just set like that. That's just kind of dialing it back a little bit. The amp envelope's set like this. And then after that, we have this distortion and then a bunch of filtering. So I'll turn off all of these, and I'm just going to show you. Here's with nothing on the sound. Then with the distortion. And then there's with all the filters. So you can hear, these filters are just mostly notching out certain frequencies to kind of give it that more respacey sort of sound. And it also helps to keep this from clashing with other sounds too, because we have this low cut here, and this cut here at 100 Hertz. But yeah, if you're going to use distortion on these kinds of basses, it's important to filter both before and after the distortion, because you can see, like, that's how you really create the sound you want, you know, because the distortion is going to add a lot of harmonic content, and it's going to make it sound pretty big, but it's going to be all over the place. And then the filtering is what's going to kind of clean it up and focus it on the certain ranges that you want it to be in. Then for the second layer, so this is actually a really similar patch in analog. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's actually the same distortion and filtering, same 2 saw waves, detune, same amp envelope, same unison. The only difference with this one is I've got a bandpass filter instead of the low pass. So this one is really just in there to kind of add that crunchy mid-range to the mix. Here's without it. It adds a lot of presence to the bass, because, like, without this mid-range layer, you don't really get that, like that range that is, like, really audible. You know, it's more just kind of like fat low-end frequencies and some kind of juicy high mid-range. But this is really filling out that crunchy mid-range, you know, to really make it powerful. So, yeah, definitely important to have that layer in there as well. And then finally, the sub-layer is just this operator patch. So all it is it's just 2 sine waves here, just a little bit of detune, second one's an octave down, and then I have those being low pass, because with some of the high notes, see how it kind of gets higher or louder in volume when it goes up to the high notes? That's what the low pass does. It just makes sure that that's not going to happen. And yeah, so you can see what each layer is doing and why it's important to have the multiple layers. You really can't make a sound like this kind of bass sound this big without having multiple layers going on to just kind of like really fill it out properly. And yeah, then on all of those, I have just a bit of drum bus. Here's without it. And with it, you can hear just glues them all together, makes the bass really fat. Then we have this low pass, which you can see the frequency is pretty much all the way up. So it's not actually doing much without this LFO. The LFO here is now moving this, like, so we're just getting a slight movement of the sound throughout the track, basically. And yeah, then the final thing on there is just a compressor, side chaining it to the kick a little bit. And yeah, that's it for the bass line. And then I have the kick and bass in a group together, just with a bit of saturation and drum bus, actually at the same time. So here's without these, and then I'll just turn them on one by one so you can hear why we have them. You can hear the saturators gluing them together, and kind of bringing both of these out a bit more, making them fatter. And then the drum bus gives it that extra push to really glue these together. And yeah, it makes it a bit crunchier, which sounds maybe sound a little bit odd on its own, but when you play it in the full mix, yeah, that's how you really get it to hit like that. And yeah, that's it for the lows. After that, we have these hi-hats here, which sound like this. So all it is it's just these 3 different hi-hats. I have this little pattern I made where it's kind of like, so yeah, just like a really simple pattern, but these are just adding like a lot of movement in the background and the high end. You know, there's not a whole lot of high end elements happening here. So having 3 different hi-hats bouncing around like this actually goes very nicely in the background. And then for effects on that, I just have a bit of echo and reverb, so that's just giving it some space, you know, kind of makes it a bit more airy, a bit more, like, breathing. And then we just have a bit of drum bus, which is fattening these up quite a bit. And then finally we have an EQ8, which is cutting out the lows and boosting the highs a little bit, just to kind of, you know, focus these a little bit more. And yeah, that's it for the hi-hats. After that, we have this little noise percussion. So this is just like playing this little that's the pattern. And then what's happening here is this is just the sound which is made using operator. It's just some white noise with a really short amplitude envelope on it going into a bandpass filter, which also has a pretty short envelope on that, and then that's what's creating the sound. So if we turn this off, there's just the noise. And then the filter with the envelope is what's creating that plucky sort of percussion. And then to take it a step further, I also have an LFO on the filter frequency. So that's just like slowly kind of moving around a little bit. You know, it gives it a bit of life. It's kind of like having the LFO on the filter on the bass line. You know, when you have multiple things in your track doing this, now there's so much more movement happening in the background that's going to make the track feel really alive. And yeah, and then after that, I have a bit of echo, just doing 16th notes. We have this pedal and this drum bus. So these are both saturating it and really making it feel more punchy and less like just a synth sound and more like an actual percussion. So here's without these. It's actually pretty quiet. But then with the pedal. And then the drum bus just gives it that extra little push. You know, to really have a lot of punch and really stand out in the mix. And then finally, I just have a high pass filter, because I'll turn this off. You can see, usually when you have a sound like this, you want to just cut out the low end at the end of the chain. And yeah, that's it for the noise percussion. After that, we have these two cymbals. So what this is it's just a ride cymbal. You know, your standard sort of techno ride, and then this open hi-hat. So we're getting like the big boomy sound from the ride, but then that quick attack from the open hi-hat. And then I just had them in a group together with a bit of processing to kind of make it sound like one. So here is without any processing. And then with it. So yeah, you can hear, you know, this really needs to be like on top of the mix, like when you hear this. It's that big coming through every time. So this processing really helps with that. So first thing here would just be the reverb. That's just giving it a bit of atmosphere, a bit more space. Then we have the drum bus, which you can see is hitting pretty hard. And this is really what's making it like really full. Here's without this. And with it. So it glues these together and brings both of them out in a really nice way that's going to make them sit nicely and powerfully in the track. And then finally, we just have a high pass filter, which is cutting out the lows and making sure that this isn't going to get in the way of anything else in the mix, especially not like the kick and the bass. And that is it for the cymbals. And then the last layer that we have here would be this clap, which sounds like this. So this is just like this really fat, sort of crunchy clap. You know, like you hear in a lot of these tracks, what's happening here is you usually just put this on the 2 and 4 like this, and then typically there would be like a little bit of reverb on it as well. Like I've got here to kind of give it some atmosphere, because usually you don't want this clap to just be like a house clap. Usually it kind of sounds nicer to have it be like kind of have like that reverb tail. Versus if it's just dry, you can feel something's missing. So yeah, I've just got a bit of reverb on that, and then we just have a bit of drum bus to fatten it up, and a high pass filter cutting out the lows. And yeah, that's it for the clap, and that is also going to be it for this video, guys. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI and presets. All of that stuff from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.